Welcome to the second episode of Veterans Discuss the Burns of War. It is our hope that this show gives civilians an increased awareness of the sacrifices that our military personnel have made. We also hope that the courage that it takes for these veterans to share their stories will inspire more service members and veterans to speak about their experiences and struggles and to ask for help when they need it. On our last show, two veterans who served in the Vietnam War provided details about their near-death experiences and described the burns they carried and continue to carry from the war. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Mr. Shawn Sexton and Mr. Sexton-Rioux. Shawn had a 17-year career in the military with tours in Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Ron served 8 years during the Korean War era. Please be aware that some of the details discussed on this episode are of a graphic nature. Joining me now is Shawn Sexton. Shawn, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me, Nathan.
So we'll start with, could you give us a little background about yourself and your military experiences?
Sure. My name is Shawn Sexton. I was born in San Diego, California. I spent formative years in Georgia. At 18, I moved away, joined the Marine Corps, and spent 17 years serving our country, various battles, wars, and retired in 2014, and then moved up here to Newport, Rhode Island in 2014, and have been here since.
Yeah. And we, in the introduction, I mentioned that you've deployed to Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan twice. That's correct? Yep.
Correct.
All right. Great. And so, so the show is about the burns of war. Could you give us a little idea of what you see are the burns of war for you?
Absolutely. So the main burden of war for me is how my family's reacting while I'm gone. Obviously, life goes on when you're deployed in a war zone. Yep. And my kids grew up without me. I missed my oldest daughter's first steps, first words. When I came back, she didn't recognize me, and when I went to give her a hug and a stuffed animal that I had gotten from the airport where we laid over, she screamed and cried and didn't recognize who I was. It took quite a while for her to get used to me and realize that, you know, I'm there to protect her, I'm there to take care of her. It was very hard for me to integrate back into my family because, again, life goes on without you. And my wife was paying the bills and taking care of the house and taking care of the dog and just day-to-day activities that I wasn't doing because she was taking care of it while I was gone. Took me a while to get integrated and find my way through with the family, find my way through and how to handle the family life.
Okay. And how old was your daughter when you left, and how old was she when you came back?
When I left, she was just over a 1-year-old, maybe a year and a month. And when I came back, she was almost 2 years old.
That must have been really hard when...
It was hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. She was walking and talking, and she developed while I was gone, you know, hand-eye coordination and giggling and smiling. It all changed when I was gone. And I came home knowing that that was my wife and that was my daughter, but it was foreign to me because I haven't dealt with that side for, 9 months while I was deployed.
Yeah.
So integrating was difficult.
And how about now? Obviously, she's a lot older. And
right. She's a lot older now. And, this was my first deployment I was referring to.
Okay, and I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I've also deployed to Kosovo. I was single then, no family, no kids. But my 2 Afghanistan deployments were almost back to back. And my youngest was 2 years old when I left. And when I came back, it was still skirtish of who I was and dealing with me, and she didn't listen because she's used to mom. Yeah. So it's just integrating back into the family is a huge burden for me. Okay.
And then can you give us an estimate of how long it took to get reintegrated, or is that too difficult?
The older I got and the more I deployed, it was easier because I knew how to integrate myself back into the family.
I see.
the first time in Iraq, I had no idea. I was young, and I just had no idea. My wife and I weren't married very long at that point, and it was just very hard as a young person. And I found my way the more I did it, obviously.
Yep.
And the last deployment, it was relatively easy, but it was still a burden because I still had to figure out how things were working in the house.
Okay, and now that you've been back, you said 2014, so you've been back 5 years. Am I at the timeline right?
I got back from my second deployment in 2013.
Okay.
So my first Afghan deployment was 2010 to 2011. I missed Christmas, I missed Thanksgiving, I missed my kids' birthdays, I missed my wife's birthday, missed New Year's, missed all those holidays. And my first deployment into Afghanistan, we actually landed there on Thanksgiving. So that was difficult for my family, and that was a burden. And then my second deployment, we were there for Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's, same time frame, just one year later, and that was difficult.
And do you think it affects your family now? I don't know if that'd be hard to say, but
integrating back into the family, because I'm home every night now,
okay.
And every day, so there's no integration needed for the family. My children still bring it up from time to time when the topic arises. So
in what way? How do they bring it up?
just, when I talk about, my leaving the family, and my youngest will say, you left us and you were gone, and you're back, type thing. It's just a everyday conversation.
So they obviously remember and
they remember.
were affected by it.
They were affected by it because Dad wasn't home, and Dad wasn't there to go to school plays or take them to sports or coach their softball team like I do now.
Oh, that's great.
So I made it a point when I retired to spend as much time possible that I can with them, making up for lost time.
That's good.
Yep.
And we talked a little before, and you mentioned that there was more. When we talked about burdens, there were other burdens as well.
Right. So another burden that I experienced was anger. And when you're deployed in a war zone, you get a task or you get a mission and you execute, and everybody's on the same page, and there's no anger because people do what you tell them to. Coming back into the civilian world, it doesn't work that way. And even for those that don't deploy to a war zone, military is a different mindset. And so when I ask somebody to do something and they don't, I get angry. Driving, get road rage every now and then, because again, when you're in a war zone, there are no rules to driving, and you just there's no rules to follow, so you can't get really angry.
You just drive?
Well, yeah, you drive. You just drive. A lot of the roads in Afghanistan aren't paved.
Okay.
So you drive, and when you drive through a village, they're an underprivileged country at that time anyway, and so they didn't have stop signs and road signs, and you just drove through a village.
Okay.
And when you're on the road here in the U.S., there's stop signs and yield signs and speed limits for a reason. And when I get cut off, I get pretty angry.
So there was nothing to expect when you were on deployment. It was a free-for-all.
I mean, we had safety that we had to follow.
Yep.
We're not going to speed through a country, but there was no rules to the road, so to speak.
Gotcha.
A lot of the times it was slow because we had to have our minesweepers roll through for IEDs.
Okay. So, and how have you coped with these burdens over time?
Well, it doesn't get any easier. I know talking to you certainly helps. You give me a different perspective on a lot of things, which is nice. But, I think it's just going to be time.
And you said it doesn't get any easier. So things haven't changed very much since you've gotten back?
They have, but it's not significant. But they have changed.
And in what ways have they changed?
I'm more calm at home. I don't get I don't argue as much. I don't get as angry as I used to. And you've helped me through that.
And so I'm glad that I've been able to help you. Are you able to identify how either I've helped you or how you've been able to change, how you've been able to not get so angry?
Yeah, so we've talked in our sessions about, just leaving the situation and calming down, and deep breaths help a lot.
Okay.
So, I've applied some of those techniques.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's helped. I still have outbursts.
When when family members don't listen?
Family members, my kids.
Okay.
We all know my wife runs the house, so. But when my kids don't listen, when, people I work with, they don't take my word for what it is when I'm the subject matter expert. That gets frustrating and I get angry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, great. So we're getting close to the end. Are there things that you would want to say to other service members or veterans who might be watching, who might be struggling, especially struggling with similar things that you've struggled with?
Certainly. If you're a veteran struggling, you can't do it alone. You can't heal on your own. No time can heal yourself. You need to reach out to someone, whether that's in private practice or through the VA. The VA is here to help us. They are here to support us, and I urge you to reach out to somebody to talk to, because you cannot do it alone. Trust me, I've tried, and it didn't work for me. Don't become a statistic. Don't become one of those who see no end in life or see no future in life and decide to take their own life. Please don't be one of those. There's hope for all of us.
It's a powerful message. Thank you. You said you've tried it on your own. Could you, in the minute we have left, could you give us just a little bit about what those attempts were like? So how long did you try it on your own? How long did it take you before you reached out?
Sure. So I tried on my own for about a year, and it was really more of a pride thing than anything. I didn't think I needed help. And my wife, bless her heart, kept telling me, you need to go talk to somebody. You have nightmares, you scream, you sweat at night, you need to speak to somebody. And I finally reached out to the VA, and thankfully they sent me to you, and you've been a blessing to me.
Oh, good.
So I thank you.
Good, I'm glad. How have the nightmares been?
They still occur.
Okay.
But it's not as often. But on a anniversary of something happening, like one of my friends passing away, that I still think about that. So, they still occur. I don't think they'll ever go away, but I can manage those now.
Okay, well, good. I wish they went away completely, but I'm glad they're more manageable.
Me too.
I'm sure. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you again, Nathan, for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Please be aware that some of the details discussed on this episode are of a graphic nature. Joining us now is Ron Rioux. Ron, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. You bet.
And I see you brought a picture with you, and maybe you would
Yeah, I
want to
thought it
explain
would
that?
amuse the audience if they saw, what I am today and at 83 years old and what I was at 15.
Oh, of course.
So, is this good right here?
Yep.
Okay. World War II ended, and all of my uncles come back from the war. And many of them were in the CBs of the Navy. And they would come to the house when I was just a kid, about 10 or 12 years old, and they would tell their war stories. And I was so fascinated, I couldn't wait to get old enough to join. So this is my picture on the first day of basic training, 5 days after graduation from high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And believe me, it took some doing to get my parents to sign a release for me.
How did you get them to sign it?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I said, you know, why are you being resistant? Because all of my uncles were about to sit, well, they were probably 18 or 19 when they went.
Yep.
And they left families behind. I'm single. You know, I don't have any attachments whatsoever. So I would like to do this. And they said, all right, give me the paper, you know.
Okay.
So that's the way that happened.
Okay. It's a good argument.
Yeah.
So right before we started, you told me a story about meeting a woman in a dog park, and she was asking about a hat that you were wearing.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us that story?
Sure, I would love to. I took my German Shepherd and my Husky to the dog park. And once you got there, you know, they were free to roam every which way. So this woman, I saw her glance at me, and when the dogs took off, she came over and she said, "Thank you for your service, sir." And she shook my hand, and I said, "Oh, you're welcome." And she said, where did you serve? I says, well, as you can see from my hat, I was involved in the South Korean part of the war. And she said, oh, well, she said, my friends tell me it really wasn't a war. You know, it only lasted 3 years, and it was more like a police action. And for some particular reason, that struck a nerve with me, and I said to her, Madam, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you should know that 68,000 Americans gave their lives in the Korean War. 104,000 were severely wounded, so they spent the rest of their life in rehabilitation centers or going to see doctors for what all. And I said, and then 8,000 were taken captive by the North Koreans, and they were never returned.
So I know you wanted to speak about Charlie. Did you want to share more about?
Well, all right. What happened was that we worked late on the plane. We went to chow, and we gobbled down our food, and then we were hustling across the tarmac, which was the runway, and to get to the bomb shelter, which was on the other side of the base. And it just so happened that while we were running across the aircraft landing place, we could hear the shells on the other end of the field. So I said to him, I said, hey, Charlie, listen to that. They're walking the rounds down the field. So we better hustle. And he said, yeah. And then he does a face plant right alongside of me on the tarmac. So I run over to him and I said, Charlie, what did you trip on? They vacuumed the runways to make sure there's no loose nuts and bolts and so on. No answer. So I rolled him over on his back, and he was looking at me with his big wide open eyes, you know, and he couldn't speak. Why, you may ask? A piece of shrapnel had cut across his throat, took out his carotid and jugular veins on both sides, chopped the windpipe right in half, so all he could do was just, you know, make that kind of a sound. So I said to him, Charlie, I don't know what I can do for you. So just then I get a tap on my shoulder, and I like to jump out of my skin, I'll be honest with you, because I was already shocked seeing him with such a grievous wound. And I turned around, and it was two medics, and they said to me, remember, I'm 17, take off, kid, we'll handle this. And I said, okay. So I ran to the bomb shelter, and only then did I know that I was also hit, but superficially. I just had to have this scar on my hand here, but that's 65 years old.
Wow.
So you can imagine what his wounds were like.
Yeah.
And when I got to the bomb shelter, I'm sitting there and I'm literally trembling. You know, 'cause I can't get over the shock of it. I never saw anything like that in my life. And the guy across from me said, "Hey, dude, you're bleeding all over the floor." And I said, "What?" And I looked and I said, "Oh, yeah." So I took out my handkerchief and I pressed it on there. And he says, "You're still bleeding on the floor." So now I'm really curious. So I rolled up my pant leg like this, and there was no skin on my kneecap. It was just totally shaved off.
You
But
hadn't
I
told me that
consider
part.
my,
You hadn't told me that part before.
No.
Yeah.
But I was totally shocked.
And does that experience you're still haunted by today? Does it?
Oh yeah, you know, every once in a while I'll see somebody on the street that looks like him, and I'm thinking to myself, God, could he have survived? But I knew better, because in the morning after that happened, I went directly to the mass unit. You know, they had a program about that, but it was a comedy. This was not a comedy, trust me.
Yeah. Were there other things that you wanted to talk about today? I know there was a lot of horror that you saw.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, my pilot was the top ace in Korea during that period of time. He had shot down 18 Russian MiGs, and I was very impressed. I don't mind telling you. And he would come back from a mission, and he would sit on the wing and he would chat it up with the crew members, you know. And it was pretty nice. And one day, we were standing around waiting for the aircraft to come back because we had a pocket and all that stuff. And the aircraft didn't arrive, you know, so a helicopter did finally come, one of the Red Cross rescue helicopters, and the door opened up and our captain steps out soaking wet, carrying his helmet. And as he walked by the crew, our crew, he kind of smiled, and I said, "Captain, where is the plane?" And he says, "Oh, it's at the bottom of the East China Sea." He said, "Some Russian put a rocket in my tail, and I had no control, and I just crashed in the water."
Wow.
Now that happened to him twice.
Is there
Sure.
anything else that you would want to tell people who are watching this show?
Yeah, I would tell them that on the positive side of things, when I was finished with my military duty and was discharged, I went to college and I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and the government paid for it. And I thought that was fantastic.
But there are some parts of your experience that still bother you quite a bit.
Oh yeah, you know, we hadn't mentioned this, but we were asked to go out and check around and see if we could offer any assistance to the other military people, the Marines and the Army and so on. So when we got out there, we saw that all the huts were burned to the ground, nothing but piles of ashes. They killed all the farm animals and the pets. And then they burned all the crops, just in case there were any survivors. But there were no people around. So I said to my friend, I said, "What do you think they did with the bodies of the adults, you know, and the children and so on?" And he said, "I don't know. I'm here with you. You know, I don't know any more than you do." So we walked around and we found that there were trenches that ran maybe 100 or 200 yards in length. and they were fairly shallow. You know, they were like 5 feet deep rather than, you know, really much deeper. And they were filled with the partially clothed adults. And I noticed that there were children mixed up in this mess, and the children, I wondered what they did with them. And it turned out, I found out later, that they would take a child away from the parent, throw the baby on the ground, and take a big rock and crush its skull, pick it up by the leg or the arm, and whip it into the ditch. And I thought to myself, who could do that? Who could do that? And that's part of what bothers me even today, after 65 years. You know, it's so many. And that was just one village. It was incredible, the heartlessness of those people. You know.
It's awful that you had to see that. It's awful that you had to see that.
Yeah, and if you ever think about the burdens of war, anybody who sees that awful scene is going to be haunted by it for all their life. I mean, I'm 83 years old and I'm still haunted by it. Yeah. You know, it's hard to get over. There were scavengers and rats and things like that crawling around in the ditch, feeding off of these people.
So how have you coped with it?
Well, the best way I can, I divert my attention. After I finished with college, I wound up in the ski industry, and I worked as an instructor, as a coach, and as a tour guide. And that was a smart decision on my part, because I got to travel throughout the Alps in Europe, and I skied all the popular resorts out there, as well as here. And I skied Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and then Colorado, Wyoming, and...
So being busy and enjoying yourself was at least part of the way that you coped with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I also, because I was antsy, I also took additional jobs. Like, for example, for a few summers when I was not in the teaching business, I worked as a tour guide. And in another situation, I worked as a deputy sheriff, trucking people from prison back and forth. And it was all a big diversion. You know, take my mind off of things.
Sure. Something, right?
Yeah.
Something to forget about.
And my wife would tell you that I'm very restless in the evening. You know, things pass through my mind, and some of them are unpleasant things, and it jerks me awake. You know, and I have to walk around a little bit, as I mentioned to you. Yeah. But I want to thank you very much for listening to my story.
Thank you for coming here and talking about your experiences. Thank you for tuning into the show. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please remember, you are never alone. If you are a service member or veteran in crisis, or you are concerned about one, please call the 24-hour crisis hotline at 800-273-TALK and press 1. If you would like to learn ways that you could provide more support to the service members or veterans in your life, please visit the Be There website that is listed on the screen. That's all that we have for today. Please join us again next month for a new episode of Veterans Discuss the Burdens of War.